listeners to our Tech Futures Talk. I'm Scott Alterator. I work here at the Tech School as the Industry Engagement Coordinator, and I'm pretty excited by it this evening. And yeah, we'll cover off on a few things. You won't hear from me for very long. We've got a number of people in the room, and then a bunch of people out there in the Tech School TV world. So hello to you. Welcome. It's great that you can join us. We'll also be we are recording this, and we'll be posting it on YouTube when it's finished and ready. So welcome to the Tech School. I want to start by acknowledging that we're meeting on Jarrah country and Dja Dja Wurrung lands. We're Kulin Nation, and acknowledge that really first Australians are the first engineers, the first scientists, the first sustainability warriors, if you like, thinking about how to maintain country, how to respect country and work with it. Okay, so on to our main event this evening. So we've got a presentation by Taryn Lane, Community-Led Climate Transitions. Now I'm just going to pause for a moment and introduce Taryn because it's, I think her CV is particularly fantastic and really speaks to kind of the caliber of person we've got tonight. So I've prepared a few notes for that. Some of you may know Taryn as the manager of Australia's first community-owned cooperative wind farm called Hepburn Wind, who recently changed their name, but I'm sure she'll talk a little bit about the rationale behind that. And she, like a very good entrepreneur, she's kind of got a portfolio career brimming with excellence and success and achievements. She also works for University of New South Wales and Australian Research Council project called Just Climate Transitions in regional Victoria, and she's a consultant and advisor for the renewables sector. She's founding director of the Coalition for Community Energy and director of the Smart Energy Council. She's a Winston Churchill Trust Fellow from 2017, and really she was part of this acknowledgement for her work was her induction into the Victorian Women's Honour Roll last year. A pretty impressive CV. I'm sure I've missed some things, it's what I could kind of cobble together. So it's impressive, it's really impressive. We're really lucky to have Taryn here tonight. But she's here to reflect on her important work at Hepburn Wind / Energy. And it's much of this is of interest to us here at the Tech School because it really touches on kind of the idea of emerging technology, solving social problems and solving problems in a way that is sustainable. I also know that those kind of themes and those kind of challenges have a resonance through the broader community. And so I'm really hoping that that's what's brought you here tonight and that you'll engage in this conversation with Taryn and with us. Hepburn Wind delivers a range of programs under the banner now of Hepburn Z-NET, working closely with council and community on achieving zero net emissions by 2030 through solar and battery bulk buy, energy audits, EV bulk buy, and EV charging infrastructure. There's a lot of things that Taryn will expand on, I'm sure. And I'm really interested to hear about the work that they're starting to do around circular economy as well at Hepburn. I think that's really interesting. It's really cutting edge. These are sort of a lot of these terms that I've used just in this small introduction are buzzwords. A lot of councils have them on their websites, but tonight we're really lucky to have someone who's at the coalface and has a long track record of concrete actions towards achieving these goals. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Taryn Lane to Tech Futures Talk. Thank you, Taryn.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Very, very kind. I'd also just like to acknowledge that where I work is on Jarrah country with the Dja Dja Wurrung peoples, and also recognise my friends from BSG who do amazing work across the entire region, not just in Bendigo town, and who are long-term collaborators of mine. So yeah, great to have some of you here today. So I just firstly wanted to go into a couple of definitions for those of you who aren't that familiar with what I'm going to be talking about today. So the first is around community energy. And community energy can be called a range of different things: community-owned renewable energy, community renewable energy, community energy. But basically, it's where a community comes together to either initiate lead and, potentially own and benefit from a renewable energy project. And these community groups, how they define community might be a geographic definition, or it might be a community of interest. So they can be quite broad. And then community-led climate transitions is really about, going for net zero or going for climate change adaptation goals, and really focused on a geographic community. And, it's really about reducing emissions in a community-led way. And why is some of these things important? Like, why do we care? And I think for me, I've been doing some mapping recently. I think 10 years ago, we sort of had some mapping around what the benefits were from these types of projects or these types of approaches towards transition. And recently I've been doing a little bit more to just kind of deepen it, because it does get deeper and it does change as time goes on. And really the kinds of benefits that you see from community renewables, or that you see from community-led, zero net transitions, are really different to more commercial approaches or company approaches, or corporate approaches. And they really, give you so much more social outcomes in particular. They also touch on more environmental and political outcomes. And then, obviously the technical ones are fairly universal. It doesn't matter who the stakeholder is that's driving it, but also the economic benefits. So seeing much more localized benefit from an economic point of view. I just have a short video to play, if I can get there, which was done, I think it was 2019, but just to actually show you the wind farm and Gale and Gusto, our two turbines, and just give you a bit of a visual sense of what we're talking about here.
Don't you sit there, baby, come and grab my body, 'cause my feelings going, wanna climb my mountain.
Dalesford's a place that can create hope for the future.
This area's been a little bit of a mecca for sustainability.
We think globally and we act locally.
So Council has a goal to reach zero net emissions due to council operations by 2021. Probably the most famous project is the Hepburn Wind Project. 2,000
members contributed just under $10 million to build energy infrastructure that generates more than enough to offset Dalesford.
Nobody can rule from the top. With the community behind you, it's a great force.
Being situated in the middle of Wombat Forest, we're top 10 fire risk towns, so climate change has got to be a really big point on our agenda.
If we don't take action within 12 years, then we're going to have quite catastrophic results from climate change.
I'm a very angry grandmother at what's going on.
Something has to be done, and it needs to be us that does it.
See those two turbines turning and I think, it's better for my great-grandkids.
There's a movement across the region for sustainable practices. There's bulk buy solar programs. We've just purchased our first electric vehicle. They're looking to expand to a large-scale solar farm at the same site.
We want to make every home more efficient.
The community believes, and rightly so, that it can get on with things and take action.
There's huge work needed to reach 100% renewables, but we have a pathway ahead. It might take a lot of energy, but we know what direction we're heading in to achieve that.
I think climate change is an opportunity that's giving us that shove to say yes. We have no choice if we're going to create a future for our kids. No choice.
And so you got a little bit of the backstory of who we are from that video, but the journey of how you make a community-owned wind farm is very long, and there's many hands that make it. And the community members who started investigating it did so in 2005, and we weren't constructed, and we didn't finish construction until 2011. So there was a lot of pre-work that happened, and the idea really came from our founder, a Danish immigrant called Per Bernard, who he knew about the cooperative wind model from Denmark. He knew about the approach that you sort of scale wind farms in a smaller way, make them more appropriately scaled to match the local energy needs, and the community can own and operate them and sort of reap the benefits of them. So he really purported that model in the Hepburn Shire, and it really got a lot of legs and got a lot of support. And by 2000 2010, we raised just under $10 million to go ahead with construction and had a Bendigo Bank loan to make up the balance. And we've always had a really strong approach on community engagement, but also this is a community asset. So, you know, having picnics, having events up at the wind farm, having murals on the turbines and giving them names, and, you know, really making sure that, yeah, the community feels part of it and feels like they can access it when they'd like to. So, you know, how we then operationalize that is all embedded in our lease agreements and our, you know, operations and maintenance contracts and stuff like that. So we have a whole lot of bespoke, I guess, creative ways of, I guess, protecting this as a community asset and making sure that it is accessible. We're a cooperative model, so we have 2013 co-op members now, and for us, we really appreciate the co-op model. It's democratic, it's one member, one vote. It doesn't matter how much money you put in, it's accessible for everyone. And for locals, it was a minimum investment originally of $110, and for non-locals, $1,100. So what that meant was we got a lot of youth, we got a lot of grandparents, you know, investing for their kids. We've just had this whole sort of process over the past year to like work out who's turned 18, because we're 10 years old now. And so a lot of the youth or the kids that originally got shares bought by their aunties and uncles or their grandparents have now turned 18. And so they're eligible to vote. And so we need to send them out all the proper packages to go, oh, you're now an adult, you can actually vote, not just receive your dividend. So we're starting to see that sort of new wave come in. And as I mentioned before, yeah, we were constructed in across 2010 and 2011. And we were the first and still the only example of a net zero energy town. So we meet the energy supply needs from where the wind farm is in Leonards Hill through to Hepburn Springs, which covers Dalesford as well. So around about 2,100 homes on average. And we have 4.1 megawatts of wind with those 2 turbines. You know, we're a co-op, but we're also a B Corp. So we've been a certified B Corp since 2016. And annually, we've been within the top 5% of B Corps across the world. We're also a certified social enterprise with social traders, because the co-op model fits into all of those kind of categories. We're really proudly an all-woman run wind farm. So it's 3 women working part-time, and then we have the 7 directors as well. And one of the projects which Scott touched on, and which I'll talk about in more detail in a minute, is I guess we've sort of gone much broader than the energy project, and we're working collectively with council and community around reaching zero net emissions. We've beaten that energy generation so far. We've done quite a lot more than that because of this year. And our community fund, we've spent to about 279,000 ourselves, but we've leveraged about 2.2 million out of that spend. So we do a lot of kind of co-funding approaches or partial funding approaches in order to leverage bigger projects. We've done 102 kilowatts of donated solar and 40.5 kilowatts of battery storage. That would be larger now because we've just had a couple of other projects go through, and everything that we do is under Creative Commons. So we're not precious with our intellectual property. We want to make it easier for other community groups, and we'll take all the help we can get as well for free. So it's definitely an approach that we have. So yeah, one of the major projects over the past couple of years we've been working on is a solar farm that would be 5 megawatts AC, so larger than the wind farm. It would do another 1,800 to 1,900 homes and up to a 10 megawatt hour battery on site. And this would contribute another 20% of our electricity, you know, being 100% renewable. So we've recently, I guess, changed names. We're not Hepburn Wind anymore, we're Hepburn Energy. And we have a new community retail offer that we're just beta testing at the moment. And, you know, some of our other, I guess, main project streams are around an electric vehicle charging network for the Shire. So we're putting in 4 chargers this year and doing some community batteries, not on the farm as well. So this is just a little short video that gives you a bit of an overview of where we're going. This is a live to scale model that one of our members made that really loves the farm. It's pretty amazing. So I guess for me, it's been, because I've been with the co-op now for 13 years, it's really interesting to, I guess, yeah, just see the evolution. And as like technology changes and different things become more possible, some ideas that we've had, you know, since 2010 or 2011, or things we've wanted to do, we're sort of in a position now where the technology's there and, oh, how do I? And yeah, we're sort of able to finally deliver some of these kind of creative ideas that we didn't know we'd ever get to or not. So one of our, I guess, big programs in the Shire, as I mentioned, alongside council and different sustainability groups and different local experts, is working on achieving zero net emissions by 2030. And when I talk about zero net emissions, the scope that I mean is electricity, heat, waste, transport, agriculture, industry, and land use. I think that might have come off the end there. And our focus, just like with the wind farm, has been about very much a bottom-up approach. So when we do our emissions baseline, you know, it's no point just having top-down data and then going and speaking to farmers and them saying, well, potatoes is, you know, the Hepburn Shire's biggest product and your baseline emissions doesn't show potatoes. It's not appropriate for us. So as much as possible, we really try and collect local data and have it informed with local ideas. And so we've been basically rolling out this program since 2019. And we have 24 projects that are active. Some are led by Hepburn Energy, some are by council, some are by different sustainability groups or other networks. But we're all sort of under an umbrella with an implementation plan that we're you know, trying to track and make sure that we're focusing on the key issues and not letting things slip, and starting the conversations now about some of the harder things to talk about. We reached 42% renewable consumption in 2021, and I think we'll be at about 55 to 58% for the financial year that just ended. And we'll do our annual electricity audit later this year. And this gives you a bit of an idea of what we're dealing with in the Hepburn Shire. And of course, it's really different to urban environments or to, you know, wherever you might be located. But we're really, you know, our high focus has to be on agriculture. It's the most important sector for us. But also you will notice the -11 with the land sector, and that's really the carbon sink value of the Wombat Forest locally. So it's also about appreciating our assets and trying to protect our assets from an emissions mitigation point of view. And then stationary energy is also big, and transport energy. This is a bit of a graphic of how we map activities that the community can participate in and do all the way back to the local communities sort of baseline through to the wards. So Cameron Ward is Clunes, Birch is Dalesford, Creswick has Creswick, Holcombe has Glen Lyon, and Colliburn has Trentham, you know, as their kind of main towns. So for us, it's always been really important to be able to show the different local towns also what their kind of footprint looks like, so they know what their key action areas might look like. And then we have an implementation plan to sort of guide our activities, and it was in 3 phases. So phase 1, which we've just finished, was all about energy efficiency and household renewables. Phase 2 is about mid-scale renewables, storage and waste reduction. And phase 3 was around electric vehicles, agriculture, and forestry, and ongoing renewables deployment. But what we've seen now, we've just been through an implementation plan review, is that we've actually taken a lot more action, a lot faster on things, because the opportunity has been there. So particularly electric vehicle charging infrastructure and agricultural engagement has all been kind of brought right forward. And we have whenever we sort of consider a project, and I should say the implementation plan project, we had 90 community ideas that came up from the community, and then they all sort of went through a filtering process. And one of those filters was social justice. So we want to know that there's a fair distribution of benefits, that these projects and programs that we roll out are accessible and affordable and inclusive for community members. So we sort of we wash everything against that as well. And what we've seen is we're now at, I think, 5.6 million in funding leveraged in 3 years for community projects. For a small, really tiny regional shire, it's really significant. So what we're trying to show is that if you make it simple and if you make it affordable and accessible through programs, and you have sort of trusted advocates like, you know, Hepburn Energy or other sustainability groups or council putting out these projects in a way that means that they're easily to understand and to participate in, that people will put their money behind it. So, you know, our kind of heat pump bulk buy, our EV bulk buy, like just really easy to get traction with them and to get sort of take up, which is fantastic. This is a side of some of the projects and programs that I touched on. And yeah, some of the exciting ones are around community batteries. Obviously, bulk buys are like the thing to do. So heat pumps, EV, solar and battery. We've just released last year we did a website so that people in the Shire could go there and work out what actions to take and what programs are relevant for them. And we've also released last year a farm sector guide for how local farms can, achieve zero net on their properties. And it's full of case studies that are drawn from local farmers. So we're really trying to just support a farmer to farmer, like peer exchange approach for how they can reach net zero. So just in regards to like action in your community, and obviously some of you are from BSG and you know exactly the best action, that could be supported in this area. But, of course, there's what you can do at home, and, energy audits are like the #1 thing to do, or getting a thermal camera and working out where all your leaks are, and obviously going solar and getting off gas. But, action in your local community is to join a local group that's already doing this work. So, we have the fantastic work of BSG here, advocating for net zero targets and actions with your local school or your group or your council or your region. So I know there is a regional kind of planning group that's starting to sort of mobilise across the Bendigo area as well, which is fantastic. And it's really important, I think, to what we tend to have is these sort of net zero emissions, strategies, but they're very kind of distinct per whatever organisation is leading it. So council will look at their facilities and their kind of footprint, and a company will look at, their sort of supply chain and their impact there. But it's really important to start looking community wide so that we have enough data and information to start engaging with people more broadly, and to start just touching on the tricky things. Like for us in our area, it's agriculture. It's the big topic area, but here it might be the big thing is transport, and how does that conversation get more connected locally, and just supporting and advocating for local opportunities. A lot of us have participated in different opportunities or gotten solar, and it's really important to just have those conversations with your neighbours or your friends about how it's going for you and how it's working. The picture just to the right is a little bit dated. So we do now have better targets, and thank God the federal government have actually got an emissions target now, and they've formally agreed to net zero. But it sort of shows all the community energy groups that are around Australia. So there's a large movement of over 100 groups, 130 groups across Australia, and it's fantastic to see so much activity around community energy. But I think if we can couple that with advocacy around net zero, from those groups, and for those groups to be included in it as well, then we can start to push more pressure up on the states to get more ambitious. I think some modelling came out this week saying that because of the 30% emissions reduction since 2005 that the Victorian government has achieved, or the projects within Victoria have achieved, that we should be much more ambitious. We should really be talking about 75% emissions reduction by 2030 across the state. And so once we start actually talking about this stuff and mobilising locally and saying, well, a science-based target is 2030. That's what it is. And the more communities that kind of align with that kind of science, I think it'll be a lot easier, on the state and federal government to also be equally ambitious. Great, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Taryn. I'm just going to stay here, although that might be difficult for people at home. I might stand up just for a little bit, just while we do that.
Yeah,
Thanks so much, Taryn. That's really informative, fantastically inspiring. I know I've got lots of questions, but what I want to do first of all is give folks the opportunity to ask questions from the floor. And Steph, have you been able to collate some questions? No, okay, fantastic. Thank you. So we're still waiting for some questions. We've got some lines free, I think is the equivalent there. If you've got questions in the online world, please be sure to type them into the Q&A. But what we might do for now is take questions from the floor. I'm happy to jump out of the way. And I might just repeat the questions for the benefit of people who are at home watching on Tech School TV. So anyone got any questions? First of all, yes, Chris.
It's a lot of questions. So Taryn, could you just talk about the Victorian Community Power Hubs and how it was formed and set up and how it's been running?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that question was heard at home because it's Chris, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's sitting right next to my lapel microphone, so no problem. Thank you.
Sure. So there's been a really fantastic program that's been rolled out. It was first piloted, so it was funded and led by Sustainability Victoria, but 3 of the pilot communities were Bendigo, Ballarat and Gippsland. And it had a pilot between 2017 and 2019. Was the first pilot, and I was involved in some of the design work with Sustainability Victoria, and then helped to do some of the evaluation afterwards. And it was just fantastic to see what was achieved during that pilot, program. And I think normally when you have a pilot, it's all about proof of model, and then you can hopefully see growth and an expansion of the model afterwards. And I think some of the results, some of the numbers from the delivery of those projects were like a 13-to-1 leverage on government funding. So these are kind of like numbers that I know the state government hadn't really seen before. They're very meaningful for numbers. And basically the premise was for some baseline funding to be provided to these, local sustainability groups to go out and engage their community around local community energy projects, but also programs and incentives or subsidies, that would be available to them both in their home or at their community facility or their sports club or their school or their hospital, and to be able to connect the dots and to help them, take those project ideas through and, from concept through to delivery, and then, support them to seek funding and, to find kind of pathways for them to be actualized. Really exciting program, had a lot of success in its pilot phase, and then it was scaled up and had 12 months of funding over the past financial year. And essentially there was 7 hubs delivered across every region of Victoria. And that ran for 12 months. And I think everybody was really hoping that there would be additional funding, but unfortunately the funding hasn't been continued. But I think we're hopeful because there is a review happening. And I think what the review will show is even much more significant gains than was done in the original pilot project. And, I think one of the really most touching things, I actually had one of the women from the Gippsland Community Power Hub stay at my house last night, a woman called Trisha, and she was telling me about how one of the key things that she sort of picked up from people was how the hub process and for community groups to have that support really gave them a lot of hope for how they're going to interact in this changing climate and in the future. And it was, you know, a process that made them feel more ambitious and made them feel more kind of connected to that process and not just kind of separate from it. So yeah, I think it's a really important model. I think when we want to see, you know, sort of the level of system change that we need to see over the next 10 years, it means everyone at all level, all involved. And if we can have some decentralized actors with some small amounts of funding, really supporting, you know, the grassroots to participate in a way that's empowering, I think that would be a, you know, it's a really pivotal part of the puzzle. So yeah. I know you guys have done an amazing job, and yeah, I really hope that
The interesting thing was we were given a charge to expand, so
yeah,
we gained the Loddon Valley.
totally.
So we were responsible for all the way up to Mildura.
Yeah.
And I think we got down to Castlemaine.
Mm.
And in one of your slides, you showed all those technical issues, and there was quite a lot. So we basically had a new team on from the first group and the second group, and so we've got this new group that's really empowered and got knowledge and more importantly experience to build on that again. So hopefully we'll get some funding.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I had the privilege over the past 12 months to not be from the kind of consulting end with government, but to take that hat off and to be in a hub with my Hepburn Energy hat on. As part of the Grampians hub with Breeze, who is our regional group. And it was so much fun. And, you know, we kind of do the hub stuff anyway at Hepburn Energy, but we don't have much money to do it or much resourcing because it's sort of more of our benefit sharing stuff. So we might do one bulk buy a year and maybe one donation project, but it was really cool to just have a little bit of baseline funding for Mari, who works with me, and, you know, to be able to get projects done. And we had a 100% strike rate with all the grants that we applied for the community. And these community sites would never have gone solar within the next kind of 3 to 5 years. They just wouldn't have done it without us, you know, taking the lead from them. So yeah, I think we've seen 9 projects and a bulk buy and yeah, a bunch of other more complicated projects as well. So super fun. It works. It's meaningful. Love to keep going.
Great question. Thanks, Chris. Anyone else got a question? Don't be shy.
That doesn't work out with is agreed that
yeah.
So let me just repeat that question.
Yeah.
Philippe has asked if how the, I guess, the technical stuff works in getting the wind farm, the energy that the wind turbines generate back into the local grid. Yeah, I think that's a good question. That was one of my questions.
Yeah, because what happens sometimes, there'll be a solar farm that will have exported.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're quite lucky that we're located on what's called the distribution level network. So that the 3 levels are transmission, which is where the large scale like solar farms and big batteries and really big wind farms would be located. And they're fairly congested at that level. So that's why there's a lot of discussion around new transmission lines and associated kind of works that need to happen. So they're quite congested. And so they now, you know, projects are basically on a queue for when they can come online and when they get bumped off as well, when there's too much generation. The next step down is the distribution level, which normally looks like, you know, a much smaller pole and a couple of wires. And then the level down one more is low voltage, and that's street level, one line, or, you know, under the ground kind of, you know, poles and wires. So we're located on that middle level. And basically at that level, an entire feeder can take around about 10 megawatts of generation. So our project's 4. And the closer you are to what's called the zone substation, the more power you can export. So we're sort of about midway. So the maximum we can do with our solar added will be 6.8 megawatts of exported energy, and then we'll basically soak up most of the line. So there won't be able to be kind of other mid-scale projects that come on the line in that way. But at the low voltage level, people can still continue to get solar and rooftop solar and things like that. So we basically generate, and it goes straight into the grid. And we have a retailer, an energy retailer. Currently, it's our new retailer, which is Flow Power, and they basically perform a function for us, which is called acting as our intermediary. So that means that they do all of the regulatory stuff to enable us to trade on the national electricity market. And then they match our energy generation with our energy product. So we have a one-for-one exchange on our energy products. So the amount of customers we have soaks up a portion of our energy, and the balance gets traded on the electricity market. Yeah, is that a lot of information? Did it make sense? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah.
So just piggybacking on the back of that,
Mm.
do you know, looking overseas and what's happening in developing countries in terms of decentralized energy, those microgrids?
Yeah.
I understand that's going to have a huge impact on the big power companies and the way that things happen here in Australia. But do you foresee, with the now focus on 2030 and 2040, that maybe we'll be moving towards a decentralized microgrid scenario so that we can all be able to work in that network?
Yeah.
I'm going to try and summarize the
yes.
question a little bit, which won't do it won't do justice to the question, Amber, but for everybody at home, it's a question really about the disruption of the potential of decentralized energy networks that are emerging in developing countries, but have some sort of potential to emerge here as well. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to happen in lots of different methods. And yes, I think it's tangible and it's real and it's already happening. But, you know, at one kind of edge of the spectrum would be Western Australia, where it's remote communities or mines where it makes no sense to have a really long, skinny line going out to this very remote community. And so they're all having lots of diesel there to kind of power it. So standalone power systems will be what happens in these very remote areas, and it'll be decentralized from the local grid, but probably operated still by, in many cases, by the network. And then, you know, I guess coming down to a more mid-scale level, it'll be a combination, like in the Hepburn Energy perspective, you know, for us, it's about filling up the distribution network with enough mid-scale generation that's renewable. That means our community can procure that, but also supporting them to, as much as possible, get solar, get batteries, go electric. And, you know, what we're starting to see at 43% renewable on the low voltage lines as well is voltage dysregulation, because traditionally the poles and wires were just meant to pull all the electricity from the Latrobe Valley, and they weren't thinking about all the, you know, millions of micro kind of generators that are pushing back out onto the grid. And so for us, we need a range of solutions to happen on a network level so that we can go above, you know, 55% renewable and start to be looking at, you know, 70%. And that will look like transformer upgrades, it will look like mini grids, it will look like community batteries. And so I think, you know, virtual power stations. So we'll see like a whole different range of things that start to happen that are more kind of, I guess, fit for purpose for what the problem is in a certain area. And then, you know, I'm just thinking about up in Yakandanda, where they're doing a whole bunch of mini grid kind of work, which is, you know, that they've got small communities, skinny lines, small street levels. And so they're doing kind of a street by street approach. And everyone's got, you know, solar and batteries at their house, but there's no island ability of that at scale. So it's, you know, at a house level, they can protect themselves, but at a kind of community scale, it's only sort of at a one-by-one basis. So I think we'll see that. We'll see whole communities that can kind of take themselves offline a little bit, and then, you know, all the way through to the really remote areas, which will be completely offline from the major grid. And I think hopefully in the next year or so, because of all the, you know, emergency disasters we've had over the past 2 years, we might actually start having some proper conversations about the impact of climate change adaptation on our local energy resilience, and therefore what sort of projects do we need to do? Because the big projects with huge transmission lines can service Melbourne, but if there's a major disaster, we're all going to be, you know, without electricity. So what are all the kind of other solutions that need to happen simultaneously?
I think that's a really important point. With what we're doing in both students in schools outside our local government area. That's one of the biggest stresses. We've got remote schools saying,
Yeah,
if a bushfire comes through and the power lines are cut, like it's happened.
totally.
We are not sustainable, and at the moment we're relying on fossil fuels.
Mm.
What are the options? And these kids are coming up with things like microgrids.
Yeah.
12-year-olds who are passionate about
It's so
what
great.
renewable energy looks like. And
Yeah.
we're in such a privileged position here at Tech School to work with amazing organisations like yourselves with Hepburn, with Sustainable Group, RSC and Solar, to really start changing that narrative and get kids to
Yeah.
imagine the possibilities. So Taryn, we're grateful that you're boosting our presenting.
Yeah, thanks. That's very kind.
It's just amazing.
I think we've got time for at least a couple more questions. So
I'll just quickly add, Bendigo actually has one of the few microgrids in Victoria, and that's out of the Stupa. So they've installed a full, like a container battery. They've made all the houses and buildings all talk to each other and connect, and they've got solar on the roof. So they're about to put a mini solar farm in there, and that'll be a true microgrid.
So cool. Yeah.
Let's
yeah, talk about that. Yeah.
standing about the schools in Victoria was it's a legislation. We are not adding so the solar it's a legislation which will BSG
Yeah.
want to do that.
You've been trying to crack that model for years. You got through, right?
Government actually did it.
Yeah.
They forced the schools to take on. So Bendigo Senior College has got 100 kilowatts on the roof there. We were talking for 4 or 5 years to do that, and we kept on getting resisted that there was some influence in the school. It's a strange model, financial model, but at least it's starting to show.
But it also shows, I think, just the power of what community groups can do. Like schools had tried to have that discussion, you know, over a 10-year period, other stakeholders, and it was really cracked by BSG. Like they're the ones who were sort of relentless about it. And yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think from an advocacy perspective, what engagement in this issues, like it really, yeah, I think all the groups sort of punch above their weight in regards to engagement.
And for us, it's the power of education.
Yeah.
To inspire the adults of tomorrow, our future.
Yeah, yeah.
What a truly renewable energy looks like. And we're in such a good position, as I said, we are.
Yeah.
I think we've got a question at the back.
Hi.
In the context of with regards to the bulk buys and so forth, have you done anything around approaching to landlords or real estate where rental property certainly retro, get rid of the gas and make it fit for receiving battery and solar?
Yeah.
And all that? Is there any work that's been done to convince a landlord actually?
Only with social
Great question.
housing.
Hang on one second.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Just
sorry.
for everybody at home, it's a really good question about how what work might have been done around advocating for landlords to take action on climate measures for their tenants.
Yeah. From a social housing perspective, and I would say BSG would be the same. So we've had success with that, working with social housing providers, because we kind of have the gateway.
And install.
Yeah, and yeah, we've got the gateway in to actually have those conversations. More broadly in the rental market, not in the Hepburn Shire. No, we've tried to target that. We've gone to real estate agents. We've had some promotions, but not much engagement. I think we had one renter that got there with their landlord, but they were really leading that process and kind of making the deal. So it is still a really big barrier. I think what we'll start to see, so the federal government has what they're calling a solar bank model, which is their new policy, which would enable renters to basically have plots in solar farms if they could afford it. You know, so that'll be kind of one pathway we'll start to see come in over the next couple of years, because they'll basically, you know, provide a subsidy for that to be accessible. Yeah.
Solar Victoria actually buy funding to do solar panels. on
Yeah.
the roof. The next stage, and I think there's a little bit of funding, batteries, but
Mm.
they haven't looked at the gas as far as I'm aware. they haven't looked at
Yeah.
gas, so,
And gas is also difficult. Like even in the Hepburn Shire, you know, we're not sort of out there going, let's get off gas. We're saying, you know, let's switch to heat pumps and, you know, let's go EVs, because the grid reliability issues are real. And so making everybody, you know, get rid of their wood-fired stove and their gas, you know, kind of backup, it's challenging when the grid is not reliable. You know, you're sort of exposing people to outages. So these things need to kind of marry up with upgrades and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got time for a couple more. Emma, one
So
more.
my 10-year-old has sent a text.
Oh
by
yeah.
messenger, and she would like to know, is the wind farm noisy? Like, is it noisy? Because there's a lot of
Mhm.
like a lot of conversation around that, I guess, in
Yeah.
in grade 4 and 5.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a question from home
Yes.
through a text message asking
Yes.
about the kind of the environmental impact, I guess, the local conditions of the
Yeah.
wind farm, noise and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ember.
Yeah, well, she's very welcome to come and have a listen at any point in time. And I mean, I think that's the thing that we always do. We're just like, if people really want to know about the noise or the sound, they're very welcome to come up on the hill and hear it. And you know, generally what you'll find is that in high wind conditions, so we have to operate under really strict regulations noise-wise. So this is very modeled. And, you know, depending on the topography, the sound will carry differently. So we're sort of located right up on the top of Leonard's Hill, which is 770 metres above sea level. So the sound, you know, it's very difficult to hear the sound from sort of 200-300 metres away at all times. And what you'll find is when it's really windy, you get all the background noise from the wind as well. So when it's really windy, actually the turbines are quite quiet. You would think that they get noisier as well, or they spin faster or do something, but actually that's when it's quieter. And when it's sort of low wind, that's generally when it's a bit louder. Yeah, and it sounds like a whoosh. That's the noise that you hear. Mm.
The second question is, where are wind turbines? Where is it manufactured?
Oh,
Where was it made is the
Yeah.
question.
great. So our turbines, we had a local content policy. So as much as possible, we procured things locally. So I think it was 9.5 million out of the 13 million was local, and most of that was the towers, and they came from Keppel Prince down in Portland. And then, you know, within the Hepburn Shire, it was the local concreter, you know, the local electrician. I think it was the concreter's biggest job they'd ever done in like 40 years or something, because it was just like trucks of concrete going up to the foundations. The hub and nacelle came from Germany, and the blades came from Korea. Yeah.
The things that children want to know.
Great questions.
I've got one more question to kind
Yeah.
of finish us off. Tomorrow, I know, well, no, I'll start this by saying I've got some awesome teenagers at home as well.
Mm.
One of whom, you know, they've got lots of energy. You know, they're going to be picking up the batons, so to speak. I'm
Yeah.
sure because we're going to do our education job really well. And I know tomorrow you're heading up to Sydney for the Gasworks presentation, and you'll be interviewed
Mm.
with us, and then you'll be working with school students.
Mm.
So I'm kind of wondering, you know, what you tell students, you know, what message can we carry forward? You know, is it you know the angry granny before,
Dallas.
yeah, who, you know, what's your message? What are you telling these students, these children?
I mean, I think I really feel for youth in particular that are impacted by climate anxiety. I think that's happening a lot. So, you know, obviously there's a lot going on with kids and what they're thinking about, but that is definitely real and happening. And for me, activity has always been a bit of a balm to that kind of stuff. So getting involved in things, volunteering, being around like-minded people who are also just getting on and doing stuff. I think it's like, you know, it's active hope by doing stuff positive, you know, for the earth. So, you know, I just try and get them to, you know, just get involved in stuff, whether it's just at their school or in different clubs, and yeah, just trying to get involved and feel like they're participating, whether it's climate marches, but yeah, just collectivizing and trying to get engaged and trying to learn more.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think it's a great note to leave it on, the idea of active hope. Just pardon me for 1 second. I've got a small token of our appreciation, Taryn. Thank you very much. Thanks for leaving us with the idea of active hope and all of these things.
Thank
Yes,
you.
it's very local.
Lovely.
So please join me in thanking Taryn, and thank you to everybody who's joining us from online as well at home. So thank you. Well done, Taryn. Thanks,
Great.